Hi, it's Tony Chapman. I'm the host of the podcast and radio show, Chatter That Matters. 2008, something very special happened to me. I was inducted into the Marketing Hall of Legends. It's one of the proudest moments of my career, and because my family was there, one of the proudest moments of my life. See, in this hall are people that have put a dent in the marketplace. Visionaries who came up with ideas for businesses that not only established in Canada, but sometimes around the world. Stewards of brands who found a way to engage the head, heart, and hands of the consumer. Mentors and leaders, and creators who built campaigns that danced across all media. But this is more than just a hall of legends. It's also the hall of learning. Every legend who walks in is shouldering an overflowing knapsack packed with experiences, insights, and ideas that when shared can inspire us all to do more and to be more. And that brings me to today. AMA Toronto has asked me to host a series called The Legends Journey, Lessons in Leadership. The idea is that we're going to take some of the experiences that are in that hall, draw them out, and bring them to you. In each episode, I will chat with a legend and then ask them to share some of their journey and what they've learned along the way. When I entered the Marketing Hall of Legends, I had imposter syndrome, and for good reason. Within these halls are some of the most extraordinary trailblazers in Canada. You know, the Izzy Sharps, the Murray Coughlers, and the gentleman I'm going to interview today, I say I hold in the same high regard. Joe Mimran, he's someone that has not only stewarded brands, created brands, being a force on the fashion scene, one of the most extraordinary minds this country offers when it comes to marketing. Joe, welcome to Legends Journey, Lessons in Leadership.
Thank you so much. It's great to be with you, and look forward to our chat, Tony.
You know, I introduced you in terms of putting you on this pedestal as one of the marketers that certainly has ever been produced in Canada, and you're still going. We're going to talk a little bit about what you're doing next. But what I think that a lot of people would be surprised about is that in the beginning, it wasn't Joe Mimran, this genius extraordinaire. It was Joe, the accountant. How did you go from a profession which is all about mitigating risk to a career which was all about taking risk?
Well, you know, Tony, I really feel that you really brought me down off my pedestal by calling me an accountant. Let's start right there, okay?
A chartered private accountant.
That's supposed to be a well-kept secret. You know, I was always interested in the arts. You have to understand that my background, I opened an art gallery my first year out of high school, believe it or not, on Schollard Avenue. And it was called Starving Artist Gallery. I had to have 3 jobs in order to be able to afford the rent and follow my passion. And I was taking Japanese cinema, sociology, and fine arts, and got my undergrad degree in those disciplines. And then I realized I better get a degree that maybe will allow me to have a lifestyle that I can enjoy. So I went and I got my accounting degree. So, you know, it was about training left and right side of the brain. And the minute I got my designation, chartered accounting designation, I went to the partner at Coopers and Lybrand and I said, you know, thanks, but I'm going into the fashion business. And he looked at me and he said, are you crazy? You know how tough it is out there. You're going to fast track to partner. What are you doing? And I said, you know, I just can't see myself in this role for the rest of my life. I really want to do something interesting. And I always felt that the fashion world was a world that kind of blended the two, you know, having this love for entrepreneurship and at the same time love for the arts, and fashion embodies that, and it embodies some of the other disciplines like sociology, psychology, and so you know, I don't know, I certainly didn't do it in a way that was probably as thought through as now as I look back, but I was sort of cobbling together the skill set required to be able to tackle the fashion world. And you know, when you go into the business, as I did back then, and when I left, you know, my father-in-law at the time thought I had lost my mind. But I joined my mother and my brother. We scraped together $5,000 to open up a factory on Richmond Street on a second level building with no heat in the winter, no air con in the summer. And I learned the industry from the ground up, doing the books on the weekends and rolling out fabric, fixing the buttonhole machine, and really learning the business very, very quickly. And I realized that if you didn't have a brand, if you didn't have a point of view, if you weren't either a major retailer or a major brand, you were shut out, and you really had a very limited scope to your business.
So,
And
Joe, before we
that,
get into that, I just want to
yeah,
seek your advice for the listeners, especially the new marketers coming in, people who are even in university. Do you think it's important, and maybe even more than ever, that literary arts march in step with mathematics in terms of marketers, so that not just one side of the brain or the other, but trying to find a way to fuse both?
I think it's important in business. I mean, I think if you want to be an entrepreneur, it depends. If you want to be sort of a classic marketing executive where you have the talent in-house, so that you can, co-opt that talent to help you on the financial side. But, marketing is no good if it doesn't deliver a bottom line. Marketing doesn't work if it doesn't deliver the customer at the end of the day. So, and what does that mean financially, fiscally, and how do you put all those together? So I always think having it's like the financial guy without any marketing background either. I think if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you need to have those skill set, or you have to bring somebody in that has the skill set. And that's what I find really in the fashion apparel business. We sort of churn out these designers over the years, but they don't have the business skills required, or the marketing skills required to really drive the business. And that's why so many really can never grow their business to a reasonable extent, and you have a lot of failure as a result.
What about the other side, though? Because I leaned in when you talked about sociology, Japanese literature, starving artists. Yeah. Do you think it's important? Because I think nowadays everybody's sort of chasing one path, which is data and mathematics and finance, what you believe in. But the other side of it is also just a sense of curiosity and this passion to understand it.
100%. I think when you think about fashion is really just a reflection of where society is going. You go back over the decades and the French Revolution and the farmers coming into the cities and taking over, wide leg pants and clogs and axe picks. I mean, the fashion just follows where society is going. And if you can tap into that zeitgeist, if you have that ability, it allows you to really, catapult your business forward. And so, very much so, there's the fashion, which is just an artistic endeavor, and then fashion, which serves a society that changed. When our first business, we called our company Ms. Originals because women were going into the workforce. And we tapped into this big shift, cultural shift that was going on. And we ended up making, some of the best professional apparel clothing under the Alfred Sung brand that was available in Canada.
Take me back to that point, because prior to Alfred Sung, your idea was originally, if I remember, to go to New York, get a name brand that you could build your business around and have permission to go and see the department stores. But you came back from that trip, looked your brother in the eye and say, why can't we create our own brand? And that's something that doesn't always exist in Canada. We're very eager to import ideas, but we were in the business of saying, let's create it here.
Yeah, and this is where I also say that sometimes being naive is important. And I always encourage entrepreneurs who have these bold ideas to really, if you really believe in it, if you really have the passion, don't give up. Don't just go to a mentor who says, it's too difficult, it's this, it's that, here are all the hurdles. You've got to believe that you can make it happen. And I think in a country like ours, which doesn't always have the vertical infrastructure, that it's so much easier to just import a brand, import an idea, because it works very well. Why build your own baseball major league when you can import one? Why not bring in the best brand from the United States and sell that? Because it's so much easier than having to develop it yourself. But at the end of the day, it depends on what your own personal goals are and where you see value. And for us, it was, well, let's be the licensor, not the licensee. Let's create something unique. Let's create a brand. And there's a lot of pleasure in the building of a brand, the building of a business, the journey. The entrepreneurial journey is a very rewarding one, and it's sometimes much more rewarding than just the success at the end of the day. It's because you have to marshal so many elements, and you have to bring so many people along, not just the people that work with you to get there, but also the consumer, and you touch all the elements yourself. You don't have to give up control of any of those elements to an outsider. Now, some say, but it's a much easier way to go. And yeah, sometimes it's easier, but depends on, what you want to create and what you want to do.
But I could argue with your world that, when you started creating your own brands, it was a lead singer, Alfred Sung. He was an individual.
Yeah.
So there's risk that's also involved with, is this person capable of leading? Is this individual going to get bigger than the business? Is ego's going to get in the way? What's your advice when you rely on personality to be the driving force behind the brand personality?
Yeah, I mean, those were difficult days. We spent a long journey just crafting the agreements that had to go into place to make the investment we had to make, so that the investment would not walk out the door, because you are building their brand, the brand, which is them, and they could walk out the door at any time. So you do have to protect yourself, and you've got to ensure that individual understands what's involved. But the first designer we hired wasn't Alfred Sung. It was a woman that I swear, I was trying to find her name for another interview, and I still can't find her name. But she worked for us for 3 months, 4 months. We said we were going to make her famous, and she left. She said she got a better offer, and that's when we called Alfred and we said, we're going to make you famous. And then, funnily enough, the second brand we created, which was the Club Monaco brand, there was no real designer behind it. It was a brand without a designer behind the name, and that was a very interesting direction for the business. And then when I started Joe Fresh, I put myself front and forward of that brand as creative director, and again, we did it for a whole bunch of reasons. And one of them was to give the brand the credibility very, very quickly coming out of the gate, because my brand was a well-known brand in the marketplace and with the press across the country. So
I want to talk about Club Monaco, because in many ways it reflects what you were saying earlier. It's you captured a movement and a moment. Yeah. And when I first saw that store with its starkness and its identity stood out, but at the same time, in some ways, I found it both interesting and disturbing. So as a brand that's trying to satisfy and create an itch and herd people towards this sort of new entity, tell me what the process is for you to take that says this might not be territory everybody's comfortable walking on now, but if we introduce it, it might become very magnetic and become the kind of brand it turned out to be.
Yeah, when we first started the brand, it was the first store was on Queen Street, and we were looking for a 5,000 square foot, a bigger box. At that time, most boutiques were in the 2,000, 2,500 square foot, and they were multi-brand boutiques. Gap was called Generation Gap, and they sold Levi's in their stores, and they were not vertically integrated in 1984. A lot of people don't realize that the movement of vertically integrated concepts had yet to really start. And what that was it was knocking out the wholesale element. So in the old days, everybody would just go out and buy lines, and there was a wholesale profit, and that wholesale profit was embedded in the retail offering to the consumer. And we thought, well, why don't we do a line where we don't have that middleman, that middle profit, and offer that value to the consumer. That was number one. Number two, we said, well, let's start with the brand that has one thumbprint. It's not multi-branded thumbprint. And again, that was very unique at the time. Now, when you say that today, people think, well, that can't be right. I mean, weren't all stores vertically, integrated? Weren't they all like that back then? And they truly weren't. It was sort of the golden age of department stores, the golden age of chain stores that had all multi brands, like the Limited and people like that. And so what we did was very unique at the time. And we also, believe it or not, launched as a unisex concept. Now, today, unisex is like, oh, wow, unisex feels so new. It's what we did back in 1985. That's how we launched, was with unisex. It was, one brand, unisex. It was a big store. We had knocked all the price. Our retail offering was incredible at the time. And it was very, very, very unique. We didn't show a model. Can you imagine? We didn't shoot. Our photo shoots didn't have a model in there for the first 5 years of the brand, first 6 years of the brand. We refused to use sort of the typical, let's get some models kicking their heels up in the air. And we said, that's just not going to fly. It just doesn't feel real, doesn't feel authentic. When we wanted to, we were putting concrete floors in at the time, and developers didn't want us in the malls because we were using concrete floors. They said it's unfinished. You can't use concrete floors. Today, concrete floors are a kind of de rigueur. And so, we were doing everything that was completely foreign to the marketplace, but it resonated with the younger consumer. And we had lineups every single weekend for a year after we opened our first store. Imagine lineups outside your store on a Saturday, letting people in sort of 5 at a time to get them through. It was really very, very different. And then the market shifted. And then at the end of the 80s, early 90s, there was a huge shift in the market. Gap had really changed their model, and then they came into Canada. And nothing Canadians love better than an American success story. They got front page coverage on every single newspaper. And there I am thinking, oh my God, where was my front page coverage when I started? How could these guys are getting millions of dollars of free publicity? Canadians were falling over themselves to buy this American product. And they landed at the corner of Queen Street and Peter and were our competition. And there we were selling chinos, and there they were selling chinos. And we had a very tough time, very tough competition. We went into this self-reflection of market research and focus groups. And at the time when I accepted my award, there was another recipient of the award there that evening, and Luke Sklar, who did all of our research at the time, and we talked a lot about the great work he had done in helping us to think through kind of what we should do in light of this new competition coming from the United States. And it was soul searching, and we didn't get it right. We changed our approach. We completely flipped our marketing around. We completely flipped our product assortment around, and our sales continued to tank for, God, felt like years. It was 24 months of consecutive sales decreases until the new concept took hold again. And this is where I say resilience, confidence, the ability to hang in, the ability to shift, the ability to, as they call it today, every failure they call now it's a pivot. And so we pivoted, and on like clockwork, on the 24th month, bang, all of a sudden our sales started to double. Our sales were starting to comp on a double-digit increase, and they comped all the way back up for 48 months. We went public, opened stores in the United States. We did all sorts of things, opened in Korea, in Tokyo, and then of course we got bought by Ralph. And we completely shifted our concept around. We completely heard what the consumer was saying to us at the time. And the consumer at the time was saying, we want to go minimal. We want to change our attitude towards consumption. We want to change our attitude towards style. There was this kind of religious fervor around neutrality and what that meant, Japanese design, and what that meant, and how it was impacting the world of design at the time. And again, I think about our trips to Europe, and our trips to Europe were very much of like a religious nature back then. Everybody would go every 6 months. Everybody dressed in black. We would all go to the same cities, the same shows, the same restaurants, almost like a religion of fashion people from around the world, right? And so this was our influence, and it was that influence that influenced all of our design work and marketing. We reached out. We used all of the best photographers around the world, the best art directors. We did all of our shoots out of either 90% out of New York at the time. And our creative was recognized everywhere. And we really established an identity for Club Monaco that to this day has held up and is still very consistent.
So, a big part of AMA is a sense of empowering leadership. And really, what we're doing today is we're trying to open up your knapsack and take some of these lessons in life. And you talk about resilience, and you're talking about, this passion and some of these attributes. But one of the things that I want to chat with you about is what you also talked about was, 24 months, you go from being the top of the world to, sales plummeting. How did you maintain your confidence? How did you maintain your courage that you still had it versus a lot of whispers you must have been hearing going, were you a one-hit wonder, and is it time to move and invest in somebody else? How did you maintain that sort of energy and spirit when times were tough?
Yeah, I think that was it was a very dark period when you go every single week and you're experiencing sales declines, and you say to yourself, am I going in the wrong direction? You have to dig so deep, because you could either blow yourself up. There's a point at which I often say you've also got to be ready to shuck a loser. And I think that the change is one of the hardest things to embrace as the business and to face as a business leader. And how do you stare down these moments as a business leader? This is something that you have to have, I think, the courage to do, because I would rather go down fighting than to be, I would say, just a victim of market circumstances. And what we didn't do was we never gave up. We changed all our stores. We added all kinds of design elements. We brought in Fabien Baron to do our new logo and to do new art direction for us. We hired the best photographers in the world. We didn't stop, and I think that is really at the heart of everything that I've done in my career, is to say, yes, you're going to have these obstacles. It's like the fashion business is made up of that. Business in general is made up of that. It's about how do you overcome. You're judged more by how you deal with adversity than how you deal with success. It's easy to deal with success, but how do you deal with adversity? Now that's where you really distinguish the ones that can get through and the ones who don't. And that's
Joe,
really when you make a difference.
Another part of AMA is really this sense of mentorship. I mean, they just had Ellen Millicent write a book about it. It's this exchange of ideas, which is really what we're talking about today. You've mentored so many people, and I know that some of the people you've mentored, like people like you probably would say, well, John Leder mentored me, but he speaks so highly of you. And people who don't know it, John Leder is arguably one of the best retailers North America's ever produced. What advice can you give to both the mentor and the mentee in terms of when they come together and they're having an exchange of ideas? So it's not just tell and sell, but really people are walking away both gifted from the experience.
I think one of the things is that if you come into a relationship like that, you have to feel that both parties will win, and both parties can actually learn from each other. And Dragon's Den was very much that kind of a situation. Just because you're a dragon doesn't mean you know everything, and you shouldn't. You should never go into any relationship thinking you know everything. If you go in thinking, what can I learn from this experience? Every entrepreneurial experience is unique. So what can I give of my experience, and what can I gain from your experience? And I think when you come at it that way, and you come at it with a bit of humility, I think that's when it's a perfect outcome.
What's the best advice that you've received from a mentor that saw something in Joe as a young talent that you still carry with you today?
I think it's the ability to find a solution, and to have the confidence in yourself to find that solution. We all have obstacles that we come across in business, and I've had a couple of people that I've worked with over the years, who were there, and it was much earlier in my career rather than later in my career, who actually gave me the strength to be able to get through some of the most difficult periods. And it was in our industry, it was always about finding the capital to grow a business. It wasn't about the artistic side of the business. It was about the capital that's required, and how do you go about growing. How do you balance the left and right side of your brain and find the capital to do what needs to be done? Because that's really where many entrepreneurs get hung up. They don't know how to go beyond that 5 million, 2 million, 5 million, 10 million, 20 million mark. And how do you do that? How do you have the strength to do that? And I've been fortunate very early on in my career that I had some people who were there for me, who did help me through those. Even though I had this accounting background, finding capital in the early days. You're in the fashion business, right? It's not like Canada does not look kindly on fashion businesses. I remember when we went public the first time, and we wanted to put pictures in our selling document, and they said, "Oh, no, you can't put pictures." We said, "Yeah, but that's what our brand is about." We went public with Club Monaco and Alfred Song, And we said, well, if you can't show pictures, how do people? Anyway, we had to get a special exemption from the TSC at the time in order to be able to go public. And so, you know, we had all kinds of hurdles as we, you know, we went through those early days. Today, capital is far more fluid. You know, you can find capital. You know, cross-border capital is very, very available. Crowdfunding. There's so many things today that entrepreneurs have at their fingertips that we did not have back then. We didn't have the advantage back then. And so, you know, I think that, you know, mentorship is important. And I do think that it's something that people should really, you know, try and find mentors wherever they can.
You know, you talk a lot about entrepreneurs, and one of the things I'm so proud about with AMA is something that I know you and I share, which is just being an advocate for small and medium business. I mean, it is the heart of the Canadian economy. What advice can you bring to you know, these heroes that are fighting day in and day out, dealing with the forces of change? And I'm not just talking about the pandemic, but we're, you know, changing consumer data, big business, taxation, complexity. What advice can you give to the people in terms of how to make sure that they stay true to their brand and their promises? Ultimately, that's probably their number one superpower for battling just about anything that comes out their way.
Yeah, I think today's crop of entrepreneurs are probably far more adept than I've ever seen. I think that they understand how to, you know, access capital. They understand how to value their businesses. They understand the new economy and what that means. They're much more fluent when it comes to marketing. Marketing has become and really has become so critical, and it's so complex. It used to be relatively simple compared to how complex it is today, and all of the ways that you communicate with the consumer today. So you know, I think that I find that entrepreneurs today are smarter. Young entrepreneurs, much smarter. I mean, you know, I get to speak to them on an ongoing basis. They pitch me all the time. I see what they're capable of doing, and it's really quite amazing, the crop of entrepreneurs, and you know, they know how to raise money. They can, you know, they've got all kinds of ways of raising money. They're some of them have unrealistic valuations. I'm shocked at how they can, you know, pivot from failure, you know, without any issues whatsoever. So, you know, I've got a lot of respect for the young entrepreneurs that are out there today. Big respect for what they're doing and how they're doing it. And I would not put them in the same bucket that entrepreneurs came out of 30 years ago.
So 2015, you get inducted into the hall, and many people feel, well, that's the crowning achievement in your career. But everybody I'm talking to that's gone into the hall has no sense of ever thinking about the word crowning, that they continue to do things, make things happen. What have you been up to since 2015? And what can we expect from Joe Mimran for the next 15 years?
Yeah. Well, you know, I love creating brands. I retired in 2015 from Joe Fresh and gave up my interests there. And I did Dragon's Den for 3 years, which I loved doing. Got involved with the venture capital firm, Gibraltar and Company. We've made 9 investments, and now we are in harvesting mode there. And then I got back in the game, created a bunch of different brands, Gray Matter by Joe Mimran, which is available exclusively at Staples Canada and also at Staples USA. I consult to Staples. I did a gig with Kroger in the United States. We created a brand for them, a multi-$100 million brand that we created for them specifically over a 4-year period, and that was very rewarding. We've just created another new brand for Toys R Us here in Canada, Rise Little Earthling. It's a brand that we will now market across internationally. We're very proud of that brand, organic-based brand, and a beautiful brand. And then, we bought Tilly's, and we control Tilly Endurables Inc. And Tilly is just on fire. We're in Canada, United States, UK. We've dusted this brand that's been around for 40 years, dusted it off, and now have created into a beautiful brand that's growing substantially and aggressively around the world. We are doing a lot of very exciting product development design. Got a big team, got a group in downtown Toronto. We hire lots of young designers and marketers, and so very excited about all the different projects that we're involved in. I sit on the board of a bunch of companies, and it's still as exciting as ever. And building brands, bringing creative people together is kind of at the heart of everything that I do.
What do you look for nowadays in talent, in terms of when you bring someone into your organization? What are the attributes that you value most?
I think it depends, obviously. If I look at on the marketing side, we have a lot of young talent that's coming into the organization that we have them working in so many different ways in terms of social media, which is such an important element to all of the businesses, and how they are able to create content and speak to the consumer in multiple ways. They have a facility for it. They have a love for it. They have an understanding of it. So we look for that. We look for ways of engaging with our customer in unique ways. Rise Little Earthling, for example, has we did a podcast series as part of our initiation and launch of that brand, which has been incredibly well received. It's available on Apple Podcasts, and these are affirmations that were done. So it depends on the brand. It depends on what we want to do with each of the brands, where they're currently positioned. Our Gray Matter brand at Staples, it's a beautiful brand. It's a modern take on a really mundane category of office, and how do you beautify your office and all of the things around it, and how do you make it feel modern and relevant, and how do you do something that is creatively inspired and product that is creatively delivered. And all of these things, you're always looking at new ways. With Rise Little Earthling, we are led by kindness. There's an emotional element to the brand that's so important, because we are servicing our future leaders. These are 0 to 6-year-olds, and so we talk to them in a very, very unique and different ways. And again, Tilly is this outdoor brand that when you think about the importance of outdoor and what that means to the consumer, and this is an amazing Canadian brand that's just been sort of moribund for the last 10 years, 15 years. And it shouldn't be. It's a very, very relevant, wonderful outdoor brand that's authentic and has so much elasticity in how it can talk to the consumer and be authentic, and the voice is so authentic. So these are all the things that we play with and deal with, and Yeah, and it's very, very exciting for Staples. We've created a bunch of other brands for them that we manage for them, and we develop product around that. So we have a product development group. We've got a branding group. We've got we've got a whole host of experts in each of these areas. And marketing today is, I think, more complex than it's ever been. I'm sure everybody can agree on that. It's not a simple straight line. It's changing depending on many of the rules that we're going to have to deal with as Facebook and many, or now Meta, has to manage because of regulatory issues, and so it's a constant moving machine that you've got to understand. It's all driven by the consumer wants and consumer perceptions, and you really have to plug into that. And you've got to service the consumer at the end of the day. We're only here as a reflection of truly what they want and what makes sense to them. The whole social movement, that people are more than ever spending with their or voting on social issues with their wallets and wanting to make meaningful change in the world. And that is another element that has become more critical than it's ever been. And fashion, obviously, always trying to be a leader, even though it's had its challenges in terms of criticism over the many years. It's still I would say that the body of people that are involved in fashion are the ones who want to be the most progressive, because they're always looking ahead, always looking to the future. And how do we make a better future? And that's at the heart of everything. I think that is important today.
So, Joe, my final question is, as we look at legacy, and I think of Mary Kay, I would think about cosmetics, multi-level marketing. I'm sure Bezos will be, he's trying to conquer space. He'll be thought of as Amazon. Musk is boring tunnels and doing all sorts of things, but he'll be known as Tesla. How will Joe Mimran be remembered in terms of what do you think that people will be talking about in terms of, on your watch, you did what?
I hope they think about me as a quintessential Canadian brand builder, and always coming at it from the perspective that Canada can create some of the greatest brands the world has seen, and that we don't need to borrow brands. We don't need to buy brands. We can create our own. We have a proud heritage in Canada. We have a beautiful country here, and that this country should really represent our view on brands and get our message out there as a Canadian message. And because we have so much to celebrate here, and we have a country that operates in a way that no other country can. I saw this on Dragon's Den, where the entrepreneurial spirit of people that come here, and they come from all over the world, and they're all accepted, and they're all we're all equal, and we don't have the issues that so many other countries have. So while we should be celebrating that, we should be heralding that, and we should be embracing that, and we should be known for that. And I'd love to be part of that legacy.
Joe, as you know, I've worked together in the past. I always end with my 3 takeaways, and I'm actually going to frame it in 3 words. And the first one is the sense of insight, that you have always had insight on the world around you. And I think the great lesson for all of us is that the sense of curiosity and adventure and playfulness, and knowing that movements are happening and and the world is changing, and the marketers that really stay in step and understand that and think about it, not just get so lost in their ideas that they realize they're there to serve that consumer on the move. Second word would be destiny, and that you've always made your destiny a matter of choice, not chance. And you've hit some walls, you've hit some speed bumps, you've had businesses almost derail. But if there's a word resilience is used, I think that resilience would be attached to your name, because you always find a way to put that consumer first, to never lose sight of your conviction, your confidence that you can find a way to connect with how they think, feel, and behave. And then the final thing is the word you just talked about now is spirit, and that word played like this wonderful rich chord through our entire interview. It's your spirit, which is infectious. It's the spirit which you bring to mentorship meetings, spirit which you bring to now working with a bunch of young people, and the spirit that you have for Canada, being more and doing more. So for all of that and more, I do thank you for being part of the Legends journey and giving us this incredible lessons in leadership.
Tony, always a pleasure to speak with you. You make it enjoyable, easy, and as always, you have your own insights that you bring to each of these discussions, and I really appreciate it.